Um, Hello, this is the Governing Board Advisory Committee to review policies on Monday, January 27th. The meeting started at 5:07. It's now 5:26 PM, and we are in the middle of editing policy JII.
What if it was clarified that we said, oh shoot, I just lost it. I was trying to hold it but just clarity of like, it's not subject to student conduct, disciplinary measures, or like programmatic processes. I know that doesn't meet the Title IX though. Because I see what you're saying. I think the clarity is like if your concern is with like an initiative and the initiative already has a process in which we address them, prioritize that over this.
Yeah, if there's a
Basically.
if there's a named policy that handles the type of complaint that it is, then the named policy replaces this one, basically.
I mean, maybe there's not a better way to say it. It just sounds like really broad.
Mhm.
And in my thinking, I'm like, is there any way that the district could quash a complaint based on that language?
That's what I was thinking. too.
Yeah, it's like, no, sorry, you can't file the grievance because policy says here.
Yeah, I don't believe so. It just would refer the complaint
Okay.
to the appropriate policy.
Yeah.
I mean, there are times things exhaust that appropriate policy and it comes to an end, but that doesn't happen by virtue of saying, well, sorry, you don't qualify for this other one because this one
Right,
exists, so
right.
you don't get any of these rights. This similar types of components exist within each
Okay.
of those other policies. So,
And that clarifies it.
yeah.
And my assumption, Mr. Mann, is that that's not a hierarchy, right? I mean, a violation of one policy has the same consequence as a violation of another policy in terms of a grievance.
Typically, I mean, it just depends if there's like a named, like there might be something, trying to think of an example, but if there's specific policy, which there is around weapons in school, that might have a higher level of like the final component of it might literally drive an expulsion. Whereas in another policy, the highest level of resolution might be, suspension or, you know, something less than suspension, depending on what the nature of it is. If it's related to discipline, this is kind of on the opposite side of things because this is where a student's bringing a concern or a complaint.
Right,
So,
right.
so I think in this particular case, typically in those other types of policies, the ones I can think of off the top of my head, like special education related policies, Title IX,
Yeah.
they're not more restrictive, they're more expansive. They actually provide more protections and more routes for the support of the individual who has the concern, complaint, or grievance.
So I'm stuck on it because now that I'm reading, I'm like, that is very confusing. Were we basically just saying, like, could we say something along the lines of like, we'll establish a procedure provided that the topic like is not covered, cannot be addressed through
Another policy.
policy, because that's basically what we're saying, right? Like, there's another policy that covers that grievance, it's going to go through that. And then my other wondering is if we need to put like a below paragraph, like, or somewhere in here, if there is a process to determine which pathway to pursue your grievance is done. So like, if you bring a grievance to us and we're like, no, we're not handling it this way, we will then tell you how to handle it in another way.
Yeah, and that is typically what happens in practice is we will guide people
Yeah.
to, whatever the correct. I mean, we've even had that with unrelated but connected with staff concerns where we've said, look, you're asking us to file it under this and it's not eligible for that, but where your concern would be handled is under this other policy. So here's that policy and here's that set of forms and documents that you would need to submit in order to receive the whatever is afforded to you by virtue of that policy.
Okay, the next one is from Jazz.
So did somebody wanna, sorry, just really quick before we move on, were we gonna, did we agree,
Words
did
at
y'all agree on? I would say we, but I know.
I
it's
was
not we.
I was looking this way, so maybe, do you feel like we need to put clarity of like, if it doesn't follow, if it's not addressed in some other way, this is the way that you would address your concern?
Hmm.
And do you feel like we need to make note that like, if we say that you cannot use this process for your concern, we will provide you like an avenue to address your concern through the appropriate outlet? So it's the two things we're thinking about adding / changing.
Is that consistent with, would that language be consistent in every single piece of this? Because if we're doing it here, and if there was like a weapons policy, I mean,
Well,
I wasn't too concerned with the top part,
yeah,
but it's like, how redundant are you gonna get? How consistent does it need to be?
Yeah.
That's-
Cause then, yeah, then sometimes what I do is I start commenting before I.
If we look at the beginning of JIIR, it's sort of,
I noticed that as soon as I got to JIR and I was like, well.
it sort of
I'll talk about this
mentions
later.
like initial complaints can be filed using this form, and then it says complaints and grievances related to student violence, harassment, intimidation, or bullying are to be filed in accordance with governing board policy JICK. So maybe there's just language in that
Yeah.
about how to file. My main concern is just, could administration say, nope, just kidding, you can't file a grievance because this.
So someone could attempt to do that, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't remove the rights of the individual.
Right.
To come back and say, hey, wait a second, right? So.
Yeah, and that kind of goes with your maybe adding a C that if the grievance does not fall within the correct, just something that it's gonna be heard. I don't know what you. how to
And
wordsmith
it
that.
may not belong in the policy, it might belong in the regulation. Because usually that's like guidance to staff, right?
Right.
My comment was stating I liked this, just to
leave that.
clarify, and
Yeah.
I like that point A is pertaining to constitutional rights,
Mhm.
and you wouldn't need to read further.
Yeah.
And that's very separate. Yeah, I like that it's separate from discipline, but it's still within policy.
I'm just gonna put that and then put a comment like, decide if we're doing this in JIR so we can move on.
Thank you. I just don't want us to lose track of it if you did want to do something.
All right. Are we ready to move on?
Mhm.
Okay, so the next comment is from Katie about referring to the board policy JICK.
I just added that, I didn't change it because I wanted to make sure, what we did with the policy, the JICK, is we put it under 3 domains: student harassment, threats and intimidation, and bullying. So we can just edit this. The student violence is not on there. I think, I'm not quite sure, it was never on there. Like, we didn't
Yeah.
take student violence
Right.
out, so it's just something that was in this policy that hasn't been addressed. But if we wanted to change the parts that have been in policy and that we edited, that would be the order in which we would do it. If you're good with me changing.
I didn't actually do the work of going to check and see myself. I
Oh, you're
just knew
fine.
something seemed off.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know we've done this somewhere else.
So the easy fix is I'll change these to match here. What do you want to do about student violence?
I don't know where
I
that's
don't
even
know
addressed.
exactly. So
That we
I
put
want to
that
delete it,
term.
but I feel,
Incidents of student violence.
What does that mean? Is that like student to student or?
Could be anything.
I don't think, oh, you know what? Let me go back to we made definitions: stalking, unwanted name calling, electronics, false reports, no. It's intimidation manifested physically or emotionally.
Yeah, I don't remember reading student violence in another policy.
We haven't, I don't remember either. We do have bullying, physical contact, including but not limited to pushing, hitting, kicking, shoving, and spitting on, and physical harm. So I think that's one of those things where they just were like, it's student violence, like just adding the words. So
Either way, it's concerned. You guys are exactly the same.
if you want to resolve.
Okay.
Just because I like,
Press the check mark and everything under.
No, you're good. It was,
No.
that was it.
Something looks like it got broken there though. Threat and intima harassment.
Oh, yep.
intimate harassment. Jazz, I'm gonna resolve your comment to the one that you had above it, if that's okay with you.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay. Moving down to this second page, there's a comment there from Jazz.
I'm looking right now to see what it actually is because I don't know what it is offhand, but Jay had asked me to start working with the assistant principals in particular about what our initial complaints and grievances forms are. And in my first round of getting information about it, we realized that a lot of us are using a single student statement form for everything. And so I made some edits to our folder or our statement form that can identify these very specific reasons why we asked for student information, and collected all of the schools' different forms that they're using. And I'm on my second round of meeting with individual APs just to cross compare and see. For update to everybody, it looks like everybody's like doing nearly the same thing. And I think we all love our forms the most though. And so we may be at a crossroads of the formatting, maybe something people want to keep personal to their school, but I'm at least making sure that every component of everyone's form is the same. But I'm technically in round 2 and have not made a ton of progress, but I will have it soon.
Well, if you need some help, like maybe creating some energy around standard. I would be
Okay,
happy
I
to
like
sounds
how you
good.
use the word synergy there. All the possible
I was gonna say, is there a need for that? If every school has their own components?
Well,
I mean, if if all the schools have the necessary components?
my argument would be, and I'm not saying that it's a necessarily so, but one of the things that I always think about is we have a certain amount of mobility within our community. And so it's not uncommon for, like, when I talk to students in our schools, I'll say, oh, how long have you been here at Papago? And they'll say, oh, I've only been here a year. Oh, did you move from someplace else? No, I was at Loma Linda, right? So one of the challenges I think that comes into play when we have slight nuances in forms is that as families move from school to school, when we present them, even with a relatively minor change like that, we're kind of creating an unintentional barrier to supporting them. And since, as part of our strategic plan work, one of the things that we identified was that we want to tear down any systemic barriers that we can to supporting our families. It feels like, it would be kind of ideal. Well, I'm all for freedom of expression. I don't know that our like disciplinary forms and things like that are a place where we really need to be able to like have the flavor of our campus at, especially if the content's by and large homogenized, because there's policy drives like what categories need to be included and all that. So if we could come to some common agreement, I think it's not a hill to die on, but I think if we could come to some common agreement, there would be some benefits to our families in the standardization and the ability to show a single standard form in the exhibit. So
And like overall, everybody was like, yeah, that form looks basically like what I'm doing.
Mm.
So we're really like nitpicking, well, what are the actual differences? My one question for, I guess, everybody is, certain schools have, what I would say are like, they feel more board appropriate forms, and then other schools have far more like student friendly forms. So like, for instance, I'll speak specifically to Monte Vista, where it says the like, specify your complaint as you see it. Describe the incident, participants' background, and any attempts you made to solve it. Ours are like, each one of those components is a separate question that the kids then fill out. So I don't know what we would prefer, if we would want like a board doc looking document, or if we want to do what probably will read better to the like actual K-8 kids we have. So that'd be my one question for y'all, because we even noticed it between our school and one other school, like, you know, even down to like the fonts. We've got a very friendly font on the Monte Vista student statement form.
I feel like, I mean, and I've heard this complaint before too, from a lot of different people, that especially with the mobility and the perception of enforcement from school to school, that it creates inconsistencies. And sometimes, you know, it's like the information and the investigation that you do can, you know, lead you down a certain direction. And if there's some of these systemic barriers, as you point out, that you might not get the information that you're looking for at one school, whereas another school you would be more open to it. So to me, I feel like it's a benefit to have a standardized approach to it and a standardized form. I mean, that's one of the things that we're trying to address at our school, is at a site level, is when you have one person, because sometimes, you know, there's several things going on, right? So one member of the team will start the investigation and a completely different person will end it. And if there is not consistency even across the team at the site level, it can cause problems.
I was also thinking with substitute teachers that float within the district, if there's, I'm sure it wouldn't be best, but if there are differences between forms and like where those forms are, like below it says where they're placed on campus, and
Yeah.
it's almost like there's different discipline infrastructure or support structure from school to school, and if we're creating district policy.
When we have traveling staff members, like, or I mean, you've experienced this as a band teacher in the past, James, where
Oh,
you might have 2 or 3 campuses and
they're wildly different. Yeah, and I don't mean that in like this, like put down kind of way, but they really are. It's night and day from
Yeah.
one campus to the next.
I mean, that can create barriers and hassles and headaches.
So in summary, I will definitely try to get us onto one unified form, and I will bless and release my commitment to ours. But do you want that? I vote to have them be student friendly, as opposed to formal documents. Can
You
we?
have to change JIIEA to match whatever you're using.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that was the intention, is first to get like, what are we all using? Because I don't believe many of the schools were using this specific form for their concerns and grievances.
And then the policy, or at least the exhibit, becomes misleading, because if I'm a parent and I just want to know what form does my kid need,
Yeah.
you're going to see a different form than any of the 9 different forms that you might receive.
Yeah, this one says that it's to be filled out with the school administrator.
Yeah.
So
Which the current ones are not, right? They're just QR codes and the kids are doing it, or is it?
it depends on the site.
Yeah.
So Monte Vista, for instance, we have paper copies, and then you fill it out. You do a good faith effort on your own, and then we fill out whatever they're
Okay.
not able to do themselves. But I think that is procedurally maybe different from the other schools.
So I support your idea of kid-friendly language. My question is there a legal reason why that would not be a good idea? And the only reason I ask that question is, like, sometimes these things end up like escalating to legal cases. And the last thing I'd want is for a lawyer to come back and say, well, you know, your collection document has hearts and little feathers on it, and it's not something that is going to stand up in a court of law. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, we're not using Comic Sans.
You are or not?
You're not using Comic Sans, so
You knew there was
take
a
those
reason.
hearts and flowers back.
Yeah, you just made my heart happy. So, as a former technical editor, so, well, and I guess,
Web things.
right,
Yeah. What I
here,
could
it's in
do
code.
is Maybe if Katie, if it's okay with you, because I'm most familiar with our form, why don't I send you our form and then you see if there's any like lawyer issues with it,
Sure.
and then I will combine them.
Okay.
And of course, I mean, Katie's done an amazing job, so that'll be sort of tier one. But then we'll also have one of the education attorneys check whatever the final recommendation is before we send it out. And they'll probably just say, good job, Katie, again, but at least we'll have done due diligence.
And then at some point, we'll, how do we want to refer to it then? Getting back to Jez's like highlighting of that, should we end your comment?
I
Should
think,
we say like on using the appropriate form or? Is there a name?
do you mind if we keep, I mean, right now it says,
Because we're still gonna make it the new exhibit then? Is that what we're?
eventually we're gonna
intending try
get
do?
to
Okay.
something, but I've only met with one school to like really like dive in and split
Okay.
them up. If right now we can just leave it as is, but I will do an ad for
Yeah, let's
myself
do
of
that.
like, get this done.
It sounds like it's currently accessible.
Mhm. Yeah, and everybody currently has access to the governing board policy and they're all using a student statement form. So that we do know that they're all doing that. It's just different. You're gonna see one thing that will be confusing. At Monte Vista, we talk about relationships on campus, coworkers, acquaintances, and friends. And I put coworker issues as opposed to bullying issues, because sometimes we're facing, families think it's bullying, and I didn't want to like just automatically label that. So we can do the processing of like, so when you see, are you having a coworker issue? Think of that as bullying.
Okay. Good to know.
Okay, cool. So then we can leave that and then we can move on.
All right, are we ready to move to the next comment?
It's me again, probably thinking it's typing too fast, but it just kind of threw me when I was reading this really fast. I mean, I get that they're talking about whatever the substantive issue is, but it just feels weird to use the word subject there. Maybe we could use.
Is that the subject, the individual, or the
Yeah,
subject?
that's the question I'm asking, because in my line of work, it could mean a lot of things, but I think they're talking about the substantive issue there. The confident, I said, maybe they could do the staff member shall preserve the confidentiality of the grievance instead of the subject, because that's what we're talking about here. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Sounds better.
Okay. I've never actually done it. I'll review this.
I think we've been, I'm going down to your next comment. I think we've been calling them, it's always just been the exhibit, even though it is a form, right? So we probably need to go up and change the form JIE to say the exhibit.
Oh, yeah.
In the second paragraph.
I just noticed it was different.
Yeah, good catch. Okay.
The next one was new also.
Is it on the page two
Mhm.
to assure that students and staff?
I was just curious, again, just thinking like consistency, like who decides where this is? Like I know things have specific spots on the internet, but within a campus. Or like, and I was also thinking like where if a new staff person were to arrive at a school, where would they find it? Each year when a student moves to a different classroom, who's deciding where those complaint boxes, so to speak, go?
That's a good question.
So I know for like when the APs and the principals, it was like post this in your front office. So I think everybody has just the policy itself, like kind of printed out, and like we have ours like on the like next to the secretary's desk.
Mhm.
And then working at 2 different schools, we don't have a decided like this is where the statements go. They both had statements available in the front office, but Monte Vista has it like behind the ed secretary. Excellencia had it by the teacher mailboxes. So we don't get that specific.
Usually, it's been, what I've noticed is that um, the policy itself is not, well, is definitely not something that that I've always seen posted, but it comes out of like a student or somebody coming up to the front office or talking to an adult expressing a concern. And then it's the adult or the teacher, same thing. The adult that guides them to that and say, let's get a statement that goes along with this. So we've always kind of put it in areas where teachers would see it, like by boxes and in teacher workrooms and stuff, so they can be able to access it that way, because we know that they're going to be the conduit for the gathering the statements and, or at least prompting the possibility of a statement.
I was almost wondering for, I don't know if student rights is the right phrase, but like, how do we make and create awareness for students on their own if they were to have a teacher to teacher grievance, like, especially younger ones, like, how do they know they're allowed to do this instead of just holding it in, and like that 30-day period could surpass in the time that a young child is maybe like morally or guiltily wondering, how do I, and maybe if there could be like a good
Yeah,
student language
yeah.
thing of like,
LCK started a report. It's with their 4.8, and it's report, don't repost, and that's like a very generic, like wherever you are, you can find it. I think they have it on their Google Classrooms. But I think that in practice, I feel like it's almost just kind of word of mouth. Like the kids know, like if you're mad at a teacher, you better go tell Miss Abadak at Miss Arroyo. If you're mad at a, go and get a statement. And so it's like embedded in the practice. I don't know. I know we do beginning of the year presentations, and we tell the kids like, if there's ever you need to talk to anyone, you can talk to us. We tell them like, if you don't want people to know you're coming to talk to us, you can ask to go to the nurse, and then the nurse knows that you want to see us. But I don't think we have.
It is an interesting question, right? Because I think there's certain schools, one school in particular comes to mind, that there is, I feel like a real general awareness of that, and a proactive, some might say overactive, but proactive approach to those types of situations. Um, but I know, especially now with recent political events, I've seen different school districts take different approaches on, like, know your rights, right? Know what you can do, what you can't do, that kind of stuff. And they like create little cards that they send home to families to address that. But I don't think that as a system, that's something that we've ever really done. And I have to be honest and tell you, I see pros and cons to it, right? I mean, I'm not saying that it's not important for people to know their rights and advocate for themselves. Um, but the con to that is that sometimes people take that and turn it into a situation where they are really only concerned about their own individual child instead of the class and the system. So
I almost,
I don't know.
yeah, I almost wonder if, I don't know if this is even in our purview, but if we did like a call to Mr. Mann, to like have people like, or a recommendation that they ask for us to make something that's more online. Because I'm thinking, one of the things that is challenging is like kids don't really go into the office very often. And then to have a printed policy for even our 8th graders to look at in the way that it's not really helpful. So I almost feel like it would be easier if we just had like a button on every Google Classroom that if you hit that link, it went straight to your links. It like went straight to your rights as a student. I don't know why I quoted that. They have them. Would be like, we maybe would need to like table that for it to be like more of an actionable step outside of us. What do you think, Mr. Mann?
Yeah, I think, and then I was also gonna say, I like that because, one thing that will bring up a couple of times for us is, that these policies, and I don't know if you had this conversation at the last meeting, so please tell me if you did, but, these policies are like at the highest level of the tree canopy, and then like, so, then we have to have these things where you're hoping that whoever's in power is making decisions like that, which will make things more accessible. Now, is it unheard of to put something like, oh, at the beginning of the year, should get informed of this? I don't think so, but like, we just want to be careful on exactly how specific we get. I don't see any harm in maybe having some sort of requirement. There's a requirement here, right, that it's made a part of student handbook. But like, yeah, I think what you were getting at was like, what exactly does conspicuously mean?
Yeah, like if we're going, if we as a body is saying, you need to post this very, like conspicuously,
Yeah.
it's a very specific
Yeah,
way to
conspicuously.
do it. And if we don't intend that, maybe
Like,
shouldn't
are we
say
putting
that,
hearts
like,
and stars around it, or like,
then
what's going on?
someone will then go to this and
Yeah,
be like,
exactly.
Well, and the student handbook is something that's distributed to families, and there are components of it that require interactivity. So, but having been a parent myself, I can't genuinely say that each year I paid particularly close attention to anything other than the pages requiring signatures. So, just because a task is assigned doesn't necessarily mean that it draws it to people's attention, right? And
Mhm.
so I think it's good to keep it in the student handbook, so at least that way, like if a parent's referencing that or a student's referencing that, like that documentation continues to exist. But I think it would be good if it was more, if we did something to ensure a more conspicuous nature for it. And I mean, I really like the idea of standardizing the practice that Adriana described, which is, during an early in the school year assembly or a walk through classrooms or whatever that looks like, that kids are made aware of who their trusted adults are and what the like tiered system of trusted adults. Like if you feel comfortable talking to your teacher, start there. But if it's about your teacher or you're not comfortable with your teacher, here's the next level of adults that you can connect with.
Yeah, I mean, my mind goes to unintended consequences, both positive and negative, right? I 2 examples, and they are not recent, they're in years past. One was years ago, there was a teacher that was accused of making sexual advances towards a 6th grader, and there was one girl, but 4 girls had made the report, went through the process, talked through all that stuff, and it turned out at the end that they were upset that the teacher did not take them on a field trip that they wanted to go to, and they decided that they were going to get revenge. Um, I've seen that. And then I've also seen a situation where there was a teacher that was openly racist and saying very derogatory things towards students. It didn't come out until much later than it should have. And in my opinion, a lot of it was connected to students that were not aware of their rights and not aware that they could speak up. So I guess I only bring that up because I think it's important to be mindful of those unintended consequences and how this is approached. So it's a complicated thing. And in some ways, I kind of feel like there are other aspects of the system that can address this issue, but maybe in a different way. I mean, I know there's evaluation systems that we have with teachers. I'm very interested in the new evaluation system coming back that I'm told addresses social emotional things and has those concepts as well. So I don't know. It's a complicated issue.
Thanks for sharing.
So I'm gonna respond to what you put and then just say that, this maybe just needs to be explored with each of the schools and figure out what our common practices are and then come back. And probably a regulation thing again too, right? Because regulation is like how we're doing it, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Right now, the regulation doesn't address.
Right.
At all.
Okay.
It just addresses the actual procedures.
A backwards to the. All right, I'm gonna nose goes it for the administrators on the campus. If you don't mind handling, finding out what people's common practices are for getting this information out for kids, I'll continue to work on the writing. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'll do it too if you don't want to.
No, I don't have a problem doing it. Can you, like, just so I don't lose it, can you do like an at thing for me, please?
Thank you as a new person taking that seriously. And
Yeah, of course.
I appreciate it.
No, we appreciate your help.
Well, we appreciate you being here because it's valuable to have a parent perspective, right? Like for us, we're like, we sent it out. Like, what do you want from us, right? Like, that's not really our attitude. I'm taking it to an extreme to make a point, but you know, you instead have a wondering of, well, how would my kid know, right? So that it gives us a really different perspective on like, can we do a better job of making sure students know what their rights are?
I do care about the teachers, just as I look at pursuing teaching possibly in the future. I'm
Yep.
like, if I were to enter a school, where would I find these things?
Mhm.
If I'm at a district,
Yeah.
how consistent is it?
Yeah.
And if I'm on the board and I say I'm going to do something conspicuously,
Right.
how do we do that?
How do we make
What does
sure
that
it's
look like?
conspicuous? Yeah. Very true.
So that's who- And, you know, I hate it when we have this kind of language, so I'm just trying to get us to get this to be consistent with how we've changed other, policies, so like, obviously, the statute doesn't require the school to inform law enforcement of
Mhm.
every unlawful act, and so that's basically what I'm trying to fix here. Is that this says will be informed, so this is pretty intense.
Mhm.
And a lot of requirements, so anyway, that's why I wanted to make sure we try to be better. Changes we made to the policies.
Yeah, because didn't we realign some of the other ones to say law enforcement authorities will be informed if required
If
by
required by
statute or something
statute,
like that?
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's- I guess we were just adding in that. This is me doing legalese.
Yeah. Again, will might be more grammatically correct, but
That's true.
legally,
That ordinance may constitute. Well, let's change this. Hold on. I don't like it. 1 second.
could it just be
Trying to go
constitutes and
through and
unlawful
see.
act?
From the ones that we finished, what we did put. While you do that. So what we've had. So the sentence in JIC, it's really kind of a paragraph, but
Yeah.
lastly, dependent on the committed violation and or harm caused, the superintendent reserves the right to inform law enforcement in accordance with Arizona revised statutes and governing board policy.
Okay.
Do we, well, I'll just copy and paste this as a
I
comment.
was gonna say, let's copy and paste as a comment, 'cause you might be able to just make it sound more uniform like that. That's like the way this sentence sounds, not that we can change this.
Was that JICK? No? Yes. Okay. Sorry, I'm gonna add this one other comment, one other paragraph. It just says that we shall notify regarding suspected crime against a person or property that is a serious offense, involves a deadly weapon or dangerous instrument. So it looks like that's where we drew the shall line, but I'll
Yeah.
just add it as a copy paste,
Okay,
or I'll add it as a comment so that you can
okay.
merge as you see fit. So then we can come, really, we just need to, there's 3 to-dos that we need to hold on, and then I think we can move to the next one. So we'll come back, could we come back next meeting and have like your draft of what you want to put for that part? That,
Yeah.
Okay.
sure.
so if we, and then my goal is to get the exhibit thing kind of finalized, maybe not this next meeting, but for sure the meeting after. That'll be like my timeline for that. Do we have a leadership council meeting next week? Because you'll have an AP meeting, that'll give you time.
Should be coming.
I also already went through every thing that's on the to-do list, so they're all ready to look at.
Oh, cool.
It looks like it's the 13th of February. Wait, no, that's not right. Sorry. February 20th, yeah.
Do you think you could do maybe a call meeting and ask? Because I feel like that'll be too long. We'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, I can do either one of them and see, usually people are pretty, like, especially with like Azella and a bunch of other stuff, usually people are knee deep in a bunch of stuff, but maybe I can reach out and see who's available.
And then you can timeline that however you see fit. And then we can come back to this, like how to address the grievance that's not in the right policy once we finish the regulations. Is that good with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And just so I know, this is clarity in current practices for how the policy is posted and communicated to staff and students.
Mhm.
Okay.
JIIR. What time is it? 6 o'clock?
What's our top?
Yes, 609.
6:30. So we're looking at JIIR now? What are we looking at?
Yeah, we got the regulations, so JIIR.
Okay.
Now, I looked at this, but I don't think there's anything legally speaking that's addressed here because it is a regulation, so it's already taken from the process. Unless it's in JII, so unless there's like something you want to add, there's not much I have to say.
Okay.
One thing I would point out in that first paragraph is it refers to a verbal complaint or grievance may be made. And given that there's been some use of QR codes, perhaps that needs to be broader.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to request us to go ahead and do like the 10 minutes independent because I didn't look at this one yet. But if I'm the only one who didn't, I can speed read while you guys chat.
I'm okay with 10 minutes. Is everybody else okay with that? 10 minutes to kind of look at it and add comments to it if necessary.
I'm honestly, I had trouble finding JIIR.
Oh, no, you're right. Um,
Then,
click on that. And then we're on the 24, 25. And then, Hmm? Why don't you have the same ones I have?
thanks.
You
Well,
have,
that makes me happier, but
let me go ahead and,
Okay. All right, cool. Let's press the paper.
Right.
why don't you go ahead and put your email in and then this
Okay.
will share the editing folder to you and hopefully you'll see everything because you definitely don't see everything I see.
Are you on the 24, 25 policy piece? Folder? Do you have questions?
He's giving them to himself right now. Oops, I'm sorry.
24, 25.
And it just say, yeah, that's it.
I just don't know why.
I don't know. When you opened up your email right now, did you?
It is showing Jazz Platinum.
Okay.
It's weird because like we're definitely looking at the same folder, but
Or if you need to get back out and back in to refresh.
Yeah. I'll try that.
Because sometimes it grabs credentials, like when you open,
mm,
it doesn't update.
oh, is this right now? As a, no, no, same thing. I was looking at your. You let me know. I'll do my best to be there.
And the end of this regulation is the same problem.
And I'm going to send you the actual, just this one single document. So for some reason it's a document thing, you can at least get into your email from it that way.
Thank you.
Well. Oh. Asking for those questions and having sharing.
Perfect. I have it now. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
There we are. Good thing.
Gotcha. I'm sorry, given what's gone on in the last 2 weeks.
That's 10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, we can start up at the top. I can't find the top. Where's
I
the
know, it was
top?
really weird. It was like, hey, you just click on it and it'll bring it down for some reason.
Oh.
I think you just had a lot of comments to that one, maybe.
Oh, yeah, I kind of added on a bunch of stuff. And these are all just like suggestions, things for like inclusivity and equity and stuff. So just to, my comment there about trying to emphasize student agency, that's a big thing for us. And I imagine a lot of schools is to try to develop student agency and having kids be not only advocates for themselves, but try to develop their own agency and how they become contributing members of society, right? So it says in there that the student will complain to or grieve to complain directly to a school administrator, and then it goes through the steps, but it doesn't specifically address the possibility of the kid uh, um, uh, uh, submitting the complaint directly themselves. So I don't know if that's necessary or if that's just embedded within the process, and maybe that's just a process question, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Can,
And no hill to die on,
No.
just throwing it out there.
I got lost in the thinking of what you were saying. So if we were to summarize like what action you were looking for in here, what would that sound like?
So the wording is specifically saying on there, may complain directly to a school administrator or to a school staff member within 30 days of an alleged occurrence. So I interpret that as they go to, such and such trusted adult. I have a complaint, and go through the process, rather than the kid having access to whatever the student statement is and submitting the complaint directly itself. Maybe it's a detail, but like I said, it's the whole idea is to, rather than use the intermediary of that trusted adult, that they take the agency themselves and move it directly into that. I don't know, maybe I'm splitting hairs with it.
No,
I can
no, I
acknowledge
think
that.
it makes sense. I think it doesn't feel like it's this particular sentence, but it probably should be added like after, like we need to say like you have the agency to find the way that's like most comfortable for you for sure.
And that's kind of connected.
Tangentially related to what you were saying, I recall like in one of these, we were trying to open it up like you can talk to anybody, and then there was like the muddying of if you can talk to everybody, then everybody must know the system. And so then it was like it actually is better to really have it be you need to talk to these people because they become experts in the system. So if we choose to do like you can talk to whomever, you can do it in a variety of ways. I think we would need to then say how that's going to get funneled to the doers of the process, which would be the school administrators or their designee. Right? Is that right?
Yeah, and connected to that, which is why I commented, in order for them to have that self-agency is to have it be available in Spanish for sure. To me, I feel like that should be a given. The other ones would be nice, but maybe not as important.
I have a, well, that could be an after. I have a question about that because I wasn't sure. Karina translated our student statement form to Spanish, and then I was like, I'm not quite sure the process is. So what we've been doing is we've like, because I was worried that it was going to look like we were trying to instruct in Spanish, and that's not allowed. So what we've been doing is we've been providing them the English and then waiting for them to show signs of like struggle with it and then offer the Spanish. But is that even necessary? I just didn't want, I wanted to make sure I was doing
Huh.
the whole thing. So we're fine. I don't know.
So I would need to talk to the attorney to know for certain,
Okay.
but my gut reaction would be, because there was actually an EEOC complaint about the fact that at one point our documents that were online were not available in Spanish.
Yeah.
And so the way that that was solved is that like everything that we have on the web now is able to be
'Cause we-
accessed
yeah.
via the Google Translate into whatever language people need. Now, the challenge with that is, legal language, even being translated by a competent translator, sometimes is problematic because legal Spanish is a little bit different than common spoken Spanish. So, but that,
So like-
sort of, I'm assuming if that needed to be done, then there should be nothing wrong with having it available in Spanish. But rather than assuming that, we probably want to double check it, especially given the recent removal of all of the Spanish from all federal.
So we're still giving
websites.
out the English and then waiting for it, just in case, because I was like, I feel like it's got to look like it's a scaffold, not the practice, but we
Right,
weren't
right.
positive.
Yeah, I don't consider concerns, complaints, and grievances to be instructional in nature, right? So if you're talking about instruction, this is outside of the instruction space. So I
Okay.
don't think that's necessarily a concern.
'Cause
But-
this would fall under like literally probably any form that the district
Mm-hmm.
has.
Yeah.
If you're able to have it in Spanish, it should.
Either you're allowed
Or
to,
any
or
other
you're,
language.
or you're not allowed to, or you're required to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so my understanding was there was a requirement for us to have it available that way. Now, whether that's changed or not is a whole nother
No,
story.
the requirement is under the federal EOC, not obviously the state of Arizona. English is its official language. Or has that
Correct.
changed in the years?
No, unfortunately, it has changed every place except for
Yeah, that's
Arizona.
right.
The last state to rescind it was Massachusetts, if I remember
Okay.
correctly, leaving Arizona as the only state to continue that practice.
So who knows how long the EOC thing even lasts? like-
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that one in Spanish, and you can probably use
But
it.
there's nothing at the state level that then would punish us for having forms in another language.
I'm not aware of anything, but but they're in session right now, so. who
You
knows?
know,
Okay. So going back to what you wanted, how would you like? I love your idea and I'm not quite sure how to wordsmith it. Would you like to reply to this and wordsmith like the sentence you were looking for? And then we can go from that. And while you do that,
I can give it a go as long as you don't expect me to do it now.
What's that hard stop at 6:30? Did anybody have a hard stop at 6:30?
6:30.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you tell us then.
oh, well, it's 6:30.
Is it 6:30 now?
6:29.
Oh, my God.
I was like, okay, whatever you want to do, James.
Well, I don't want to, I mean, I just don't want to be here till like 9 o'clock. I mean,
Absolutely. I'll be
um,
leaving.
I think for me, 7 will always be the like, even if I've got 20 more minutes, those 20 minutes are my minutes. But I'm okay with this 30-minute flexible, and I can do the 30 minutes today if people would like. But your girl could always go home. So what would you guys
Just have to
prefer?
be home for bedtime, which is at 7:30, but between like 7:20 and 7:30,
I don't-
it's literally less than 5 minutes.
I don't want to squash anybody's thunder. Can we compromise and say 6:45?
Sure.
That would work better for me.
I'm
Okay.
a huge fan of compromise.
So let's do, so wordsmith that one.
I can
and
play
then
with
let's
it,
do
yeah.
15 more
How much
minutes
did
of
I
this.
have?
So that puts us at,
I would
should we
think if
add
anyone would know that
electronic
about
for
me.
the verbal complaints? However, a complaint,
I hate compromise.
What are you looking at?
I'm going to the next one. So you're working on student and school administrators. So now
Yeah, I'm just
Katie
gonna,
has verbal, and I think, yeah, however, a complaint or grievance,
Can I ask a quick clarifying question?
always, I love.
So are we trying to figure out if it is legal allowing us to have Spanish?
We're just gonna,
forms on the website?
we're gonna verify that. it
And
is, yeah.
both, is it illegal not to? Is that both?
Illegal.
I think I muddied it.
Or like,
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
No,
as we move
it's-
forward with all this. I'm like,
Yeah, it's a valid question. So there had been a past action requiring us to make certain that like our website and our policies were available in both English and Spanish. And so, and that came from, as I recall, it was federal and it was related to an EEOC complaint.
Okay.
So the way that the EEOC complaint was satisfied was by us putting those components into place. So it's my belief that all of this technically currently does need to be available in both English and Spanish. And the way we solved it was by way of utilization of Google Translate, because then it provided it for however many languages Google Translate does.
And I was coming out of the classroom, and so we're not allowed to do instruction at all in Spanish. And so in my like overabundance of caution, I didn't want like policies that we do
Did catch that.
to be in that. So that's why we have it like weirdly separated. So we just weren't sure. So
Right. And the question is, which type of animal is it, right? Like, is it an instructional animal or is it a policy animal? And to my layman's interpretation, it's a policy animal, not an instructional animal, but that's why I said we want to double check with the council to be sure, especially given the changing climate and some of the things that have happened with the federal government removing the Spanish versions of their website. You know, I don't know, like if in executive orders or any place else, any of that has changed and would have an impact on what we can and can't do. Not aware of anything that changes it, but if we're going to verify with legal counsel anyway, we might as well find out.
Thank you.
Should we add or electronic? That's the comment we're on.
mhm. I think that's fine. Does it make more sense for it to be a complaint or grievance may be made verbally or electronically? Or just put or electronic? I'm nitpicking now. What is it? Usually happens when I get tired. What do you guys prefer? Like this? A verbal or electronic complaint? You good?
Sounds good. And then the next one is clarity for teachers needed.
Oh, I'm just wondering, when I was an assistant principal and there was like, it was a little confusing for people when it included an administrator. So like, as the assistant principal, if the teachers had a complaint about the principal, they were like, well, I'm telling you because you're the other administrator. And if that's fine, or they were like, well, do I go to HR because it's a thing about the teacher or the administrator, or do I go to like Eric or Jay? So I just think that we just need clarity about like, what is the next administrative level? It doesn't have to necessarily be on here, but I think that that's a common struggle for teachers.
Yeah, I think typically you would go to the next level above, like in the hierarchy. So if it was, let's say in your circumstance where you're the principal, Karina's the assistant principal, someone has a complaint against you,
Mhm.
they would probably then go to human resources. They would go to Joel next. However, having said that, like it's my personal belief that if they have a complaint against you and they bring it to Karina, then it's also the onus is upon Karina to also reach out to say, we have a staff member who may be reaching out to you. This is the concern that they have.
And would it, and so, because, so you would say it would be Joel before it would be Eric.
I think so if it's a personnel issue. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know, maybe that's not right because Eric typically is in a more supervisory capacity. But
That's where I was, that's.
I believe
maybe
there's,
I need clarity.
but I
not the
believe,
teachers.
I'm pretty certain there's other policies where it refers people to human resources as the next level
Okay.
above whoever their supervisor is. Does that sound right to you, Hope?
Yes, because
Yeah.
if they call our office
Mhm.
and it's a personnel complaint, we tell them they have to start with.
Okay, so should we, instead of putting it, shall forward the complaint or grievance to the next administrative level like on site and or HR? And I guess, I mean, Tim, you were a teacher too. Is that something that teachers would want to see in here or am I nitpicking? 'Cause I'm okay with that.
I've tried to get him to do.
I mean, it'd be nice if teachers kind of, but usually it's either go to your principal and go to HR.
Okay.
It doesn't hurt though. I think that-
Yeah, specifics are good.
So my vote would just be instead of a next administrative level, complaint or grievance to human resources.
Well, the only problem with going straight to human resources is if it's let's say as an example, it was the assistant principal, then
Oh,
the
okay.
principal might be the appropriate person to bring that complaint to. Like it really should go to the principal before it goes to HR.
Okay, so
If you
maybe-
haven't had, like if you've complained to the principal and it appears nothing's happened, then obviously it would be escalated to HR, but
Okay.
Yeah, or.
yeah.
Would it behoove us to have like a flow chart somewhere? I know that might be, but
It's a little
like at
awkward.
some point somewhere like this
Yeah.
person, that person, if we're mentioning next level.
I have not seen diagrams like that in policy. That doesn't mean that it's not possible or feasible. It's just not something that I've seen before. So, and we could certainly construct something and see if it passes legal muster.
I think this is the last comment that would be easy to just like cut off from, and then we'll have 10 minutes to do calendars and stuff. I just wanted to make sure, I'm just gonna change this back to, not back to, I'm gonna change it to the order that we had just changed the other policy to. Everyone go with that? Okay.
All right.
Mean we're good with keeping student violence.
I'm taking it out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm changing, yeah.
So student violence would be.
It would be completely out, and then it'll be harassment, threats and intimidation, and or bullying.
Would that help? Or
Uh,
not?
If it's, right now, I think we're doing it just to remain continuity, and then it would not help. But if we want to make sure people know we are talking about when things are violent, then yes, it would parentheses bullying. So references, I don't,
I guess my question would be is there bullying that is not student violence? And do we narrow the scope by including that, or are we trying to specifically target student violence? So like could bullying be intimidation rather than,
They just don't see like it's one off. Violent. Necessary.
but that would, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like by the way, the definition of bullying is it's like there's, and I don't
Repeated,
remember
yeah.
specific, but there's persistent, repeated, what, those types
The
of.
only reason I ask is if you're a parent looking at this, okay, my kid just got attacked.
Right,
Is it harassment? Is it threats? Or it's a bullying? So.
right.
Not for tonight, but just.
yeah. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna strike it out, but I'll put a comment, because I think in order to resolve it, we have to look and see where do we talk specifically about student violence.
And you lost the D in the end or bullying.
I keep, this is the second time I did that too. I'll get it, just a second.
No
Where
worries.
do we talk about student violence in the policy? Okay. Okay.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
That seems like a pretty good stopping spot for right now. We went and edited JII, and we are in the middle of editing JIIR. We're following the prioritized policies from the checklist, and at the next meeting, we'll start with continuing JIIR, where's where we left off. Anything else that anyone wants to add or consider for future agenda items or discussion?
I was just gonna say, do we want to all just make sure we do like the homework first read for all documents pertaining to JICH as well? So that way if we do get, we don't have to use independent time in here. So anything that's drug and alcohol use by students, including the exhibits and the regulations, if you can take a first look at, does that work for everybody?
I didn't look at the exhibits and regulations, but I imagine it's gonna be like this for me, so I think you guys can just look at those without me, because I don't think the exhibits and regulations are gonna have anything that's not already addressed in the.
Okay, perfect. You want to confirm everyone can be here February 10th?
Just Hilda already sent out the calendar invites, right? Do we have the next calendar invites for the next 3 or 4 meetings?
Yep, but I just was like, if we're here, we might as well make sure like you're all still coming, right? Like, 'cause I wasn't here and I can make that meeting, but everyone's still good with it. Okay.
Anybody got any concerns or things like that related to the calendar? Nope. All right, unless anybody has anything else for the good of the order, a motion to adjourn the meeting. Can I get a second? All those in favor?
Hi.
Meeting adjourned.